Hello and welcome to the second granny square of our week of grannies. So our latest yarn down make along with Emma, and this week we're talking grannies, and this is another granny square for you to have a go at. We're going to use exactly the same stitches as we used yesterday in the classic granny square, so there's nothing new to learn, just different repeats. Okay, so as always the pattern is available to download on the website for free in a handy little booklet if you wanted to print it out. But it also works just as well on your laptop or your tablet or phone. So this time I thought I'd show you what it's like if you start with a paler colour and move out to the dark. So yesterday in the classic granny we edged it with the oatmeal colour, but we're going to start with oatmeal today. Okay, so this is the Wensleydale Square, that's what we've called it. We've decided to celebrate our favourite dales. So this pattern we've named the Wensleydale. So to start with the Wensleydale, we start exactly the same as we did with a slip knot, and we chain 4. So using my 4mm hook and my double knit wool. So we start with a slip knot and a chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the hook goes into the first chain. We pull it through, so we've got a nice little circle, and our first round of our granny square is going to work into this circle. And actually this granny square starts off really with a bit of a circle in the middle. Okay, so round 1, in this round we're going to work into that middle, as I just said. We're going to chain 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to do a repeat of just 1 treble and 1 chain all the way around. Okay, and we're going to do that, as you can see from here, so that we've got 8 little trebles. Looks a little bit like a flower in the middle. Okay, so we're going to do 8 stitches in there, so that the first chain actually starts as this chain starts and counts as the first stitch, really your first treble, even though it's a chain. So we do 1 treble into that middle, then 1 chain, then 1 treble, 1 chain, 1 treble, 1 chain. The pattern says you repeat it 6 times, so that actually you've done it 7 times in total, and your chain at the beginning counts as your first treble. Treble and a chain. Let's just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I've done my 8. I've finished with the chain. I'll pull the middle of my circle to make a nice tight middle for my granny square, which actually is starting as a granny circle, and we slip into that space there, pull the yarn through, right through the stitch and through again, so that we're ready to change colour. Now we're going to start our next round in any of these chain spaces. Doesn't matter which one, we can do any of them. Okay, so I'm going to use green next. Okay, so we start this round again by doing a slip stitch and then chaining 4. 1, oh, it didn't go all the way through. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. In the next chain space, so not where this chain is, but in this space here, okay, I'm going to do 2 trebles. So remember, it's called a treble because it has 3 loops on your hook. Okay, so we're doing 2. So we do yarn over, through the stitch or the space, yarn over and back through, 3 on my hook, yarn over, through 2, yarn over, through 2. Okay, and we're going to repeat this round in each of the spaces all the way around my circle with a chain 1 in between. So I've done 2 trebles, chain 1, 2 trebles, chain 1, 2 trebles, chain 1, 2 trebles, chain 1. The end's just getting in the way, but we can pull it through afterwards, it doesn't matter. Didn't go all the way through, so I'll just pull that back. Trebles, nearly there. 2 trebles. The thing I like about granny squares is you've got a completed little perfect thing to show very, very quickly once you've got the hang of it. Remember, practice makes perfect. Okay, so I've done my 2 rounds. There now, in round 3, this is where it becomes a granny square, so your circle becomes a square. Okay, so we're going to join in the pale blue into any of those spaces with a slip stitch, and then we're going to chain 5 because this is going to be our first corner, because all squares have to have 4 corners, so this is the first corner. So we chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then into this same space where I've just done my chain 5, I'm going to do 3 trebles. I'm not going to go through that there. Right, 3 trebles. 1, 2, 3, and chain 1. Okay, then I'm going to do 3 trebles into the next space. Chain 1, and then we're into our next corner, so we do 3 trebles, 2 chains, 3 trebles into that same chain space, and you'll start to see it take shape as a square. So this round is just like the 3rd round of your classic granny. So you're doing exactly the same, and your 4th round will be the same as a classic granny. So there's nothing new from here on. It's exactly the same as we did in the classic granny square. But it's just starting with a slightly different shape. So you start to introduce, I don't know, some different patterns into the middle, but you're using the same stitches. So you really is nothing new. I think this might be one of my favourite granny squares actually. It can look really, really pretty. I did one like this for a friend's baby with pretty pinks and yellows in the middle, so they all look like flowers. And a little bit of a meadow, like a meadow blanket or a flower bed. But it really is just a good excuse to play with colours. I just love playing with colour. And for me, using up all those leftovers and bits that you've got is that perfect way of using it up. And it almost feels like if you've got little bits left over from other projects, it feels like a free project as well, because it feels like you haven't really spent anything, because they're bits that didn't really have a destiny. But if you can make granny squares, they can be destined to become little blankets, bags, scarves, hats. The possibilities really are endless. So we fasten off. So that's 3 rounds of your square done, and you can see how a circle now has become a square. So the very last round, I'm going to do it in the dark blue, and it's just like round 4 of granny square, classic granny. So we start with a chain 5, and then 2, 3 trebles into each space, apart from when you get all the way around to the end, because you've already done that chain counts as your first treble. You just do 2 trebles into there to complete that cluster of 3 at the very beginning, and join it in. Okay. So just using a chain, a slip stitch and a treble, you can now make 2 quite different granny squares. Going all the way round. So we'll talk a little bit of granny squares while I keep going round. I've been busy trying to use up bits of stash. You'll have heard that phrase, bits of stash. And then you find that actually you need a little bit more of that colour, so you just have to buy a little bit more. But I've been trying really hard not to do that. And finishing off projects, and my tidying up in my messy house that's got piles of stuff here, there and everywhere. I found a whole basket of squares that I'd almost got enough for a blanket. I think I decided it was going to be 144 squares, it was 12 by 12, so not a huge blanket, and they're all bright colours apart from the last round, which is grey. And I ran out of grey wool, so I'd ordered some wool and I'd obviously put it to one side. Anyhow, I counted them, yes, I've got 139, and I got the grey wool. I got the grey wool ages and ages ago, so I've almost got a completed granny square blanket. I just need to do a few more squares and then join them all together. I can't decide whether to sew them together or to crochet them together. Just can't decide just yet, but that's quite exciting because it does take quite a long time to make enough squares for a whole blanket. But to find one that I did last year or the year before, I really have no idea when I started it actually. When I started and didn't finish. But that feels like a real bonus project. I can finish that off really quickly. So that's a nice weekend job to do sometime. Next rainy weekend, I think I'll be doing that. Right, and we've almost got to the end of this Wensleydale granny square. Don't know if anybody's been to Wensleydale. Not too far from Yarndale. Well worth a visit. So I do my 2 trebles into that last corner, or the first corner, and slip stitch into the space, pull through and fasten off. And there you have it, one lovely Wensleydale granny square. All you need to do is sew in your ends. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to seeing lots of Wensleydale squares. If you do a Wensleydale square, please share.